Number 9. Paul Templar. In the 1990s, Paul Templar was leading a kayaking expedition down the Zambezi River near Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe. 27-year-old Templar was operating a river tour business and for years had been taking customers on excursions. On the day that his life would be forever changed, Templar was accompanied by 3 apprentice guides, and nearing the end of the tour, they were all in separate kayaks when they stumbled upon a group of hippos quietly wallowing in the shadows. An experienced guide, Templar knew how dangerous they could be and steered his group away from them. Suddenly, he saw one of the guides being flung into the air and then splashing into the river. Templar paddled back to help him, but before he could reach him, found himself head first and up to his waist inside the throat of an enraged hippo bull. He could feel enormous pressure on his body and fruitlessly struggled to escape. He was only able to do so after the beast loosened the grip of its colossal jaws. A second guide risked his life by paddling towards Templar and managed to bring him to shore. It was there that he discovered one of his arms had been stripped of the flesh from the elbow down and crushed to a pulp from the elbow up. Templar survived the encounter, but his left arm was beyond saving and required amputation. His road to recovery was long and he spent months in a deep depression after having to take a desk job. However, within 2 years of the attack, Templar was back on the Zambezi, leading an expedition and using a specially adapted kayak paddle to navigate the waters. Number 8. April Morton. In December of 2019, an experienced Tennessee kayaker died in an accident on Laurel River in North Carolina. 31-year-old April Morton was considered an expert paddler, part of the Chota Canoe Club in Knoxville. An emergency call was placed at about 1:45 p.m. and paramedics arrived to find Morton in critical condition about 2 miles from the trailhead used to access the popular Whitewater River. She'd reportedly gotten hung underneath a tree in the water, which she didn't see going into the rapids. First responders took over resuscitation efforts from Morton's friends and a doctor who happened to be kayaking nearby and had rushed to her aid. Morton was transported to a hospital in Asheville, where she was pronounced dead. Number 7. Scott Puckett and Alex Eckern. In 2019, spring flooding claimed the lives of 2 kayakers after they'd set off on a swollen creek in Missouri. Scott Puckett, Alex Eckern, and Justin Seal had gone paddling near the small town of Walnut Shade. The men were swept over a low-water bridge and caught in a hydraulic, which is water flowing on top of itself that creates a washing machine effect, which is difficult to escape. None of the men were wearing life vests when their kayaks capsized. 35-year-old Puckett and Eckern, aged 23, were taken away by the raging waters. Seal escaped by climbing a steep bank and went to get help. The victims' bodies were recovered in the days that followed, after the water level had gone down. Number 6. Thomas Christopher Lloyd. In September of 2016, student Christopher Lloyd drowned after his kayak capsized on a fast-flowing stretch of the River Glaslyn in Gwynedd, Wales. 24-year-old Lloyd, who studied environmental management at Bangor University, and his friend, Jack Swan, did several laps on a section of the river that measured close to 1,000 feet. On the tragic last turn, Lloyd's kayak flipped and he was unable to right it. He collided with several massive boulders as Swan struggled to reach him. Once he'd finally gotten within range, Lloyd was already face down in the water, unresponsive. Swan tried attaching a line to his body, but couldn't dislodge him as his foot was stuck in the rocks. Firefighters, police, and mountain rescuers arrived at the scene, but the conditions were deemed too dangerous for retrieving the body. A coroner would later report drowning as the official cause of death. Number 5. Thomas Warden. In early 2020, a British tourist died as he and his girlfriend were trying to kayak across a lake in Argentina. 34-year-old Thomas Warden and Charlotte Inman were at the foothills of the Andes and had set off from an island called Isla Victoria on Nahuel Huapi, a glacial lake with crystal clear waters. They were trying to reach the famous town of Bariloche. The authorities had recently closed the lake to nautical activities because of the weather conditions. While out on the water, the couple faced powerful winds of up to 50 miles per hour. Both their kayaks were overturned, but while Inman was able to get back into hers, Warden drifted away. She desperately paddled back to shore, where she went searching for help. She was placed into a vehicle with heated and given hot beverages, as well as a change of clothes. Inman was constantly asking if the authorities were looking for her boyfriend while repeating, in a state of shock, "What a bad decision." Warden's body was later found 6 miles off Bariloche, and nearly 20 miles from where he disappeared. Number 4. Rod Johnston. In 2021, a British man died while paddling his kayak off a tourist beach near Cape Town, South Africa. 46-year-old Rod Johnston, a banker who had a seaside holiday home in the area, had set off in calm conditions, but the weather abruptly changed. Johnston was forced to contend with high winds and strong offshore waves. He'd been lent a sleek surf ski by a friend who'd visited him at Christmas, but such watercrafts are not meant to be used by amateurs, particularly in rough weather conditions. It's believed that he was dragged to open sea where his kayak capsized. A rescue operation was launched, involving several vessels and a helicopter. Shortly after dawn, his kayak was spotted, floating adrift, 5 miles out to sea. Johnston's lifeless body was still attached to it by a short safety line. A rescue diver was dropped from the helicopter and secured his body, which was then airlifted from the rough seas. Johnston was survived by his wife Debbie and a 24-year-old son. Number 3. Mary Neal. In 1999, orthopedic surgeon Mary Neal, originally from Wyoming, was kayaking on the Fue River in Chile. She went over a waterfall and got trapped at its base. Neal struggled to break free from the bedrock, but soon realized her efforts were fruitless against the volume and sheer force of the water. She spent almost 12 minutes submerged, a time during which the woman could feel her bones breaking, before ultimately accepting that she was going to die, interpreting it as God's will. Neal's companions then extracted her from the water. One of them, an EMT, remembered that she was blue, waxy, no heartbeat, no breathing, cold to the touch, dead. After going without oxygen for 24 minutes, Neal's chances of survival were close to zero. Miraculously, she then recovered without suffering any brain damage. Upon regaining consciousness, Neal would tell her companions that she'd been to heaven. She described feeling at peace as her spirit was peeled away from her body, and that she'd conversed with entities of unknown origins. By her account, she watched from above as the other kayakers were performing CPR on her. She was ultimately told that she had to go back and share her story. The group was far from help, and Neal had suffered multiple broken bones. However, they were surprised to find an ambulance parked on a dirt road nearby. Neal eventually made a full recovery, but her ordeal wasn't over. Before being sent back in her body, she'd allegedly been forewarned that her oldest son, Willie, was going to die young. 10 years after Neal's kayaking accident, and as she finished her memoir, 20-year-old Willie was killed in a car crash by a distracted driver. Neal's story was featured in the Netflix documentary series, Surviving Death. Today's topic was requested by Instagram follower AJ with the Guitar. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below, or follow us on Instagram and reach out to us there. Number 2. Jeremy Worthy. In May of 2020, harrowing footage out of New South Wales, Australia, showed a kayaker's final moments as he battled the swell near Bateman's Bay. 43-year-old Jeremy Worthy had gone out to fish, but then got exhausted while pushing against the tide. In an effort to get back to Snapper Island, he uploaded a live video to Facebook at around 12:21, which has been interpreted as a last plea for help, with the man detailing the perils of his situation as the waves were pushing him where he didn't want to go. He added that he didn't want to be an embarrassed fool by calling Marine Rescue. Just 9 minutes after he'd posted a video, a member of the public found his empty kayak and notified the authorities. A rescue officer retrieved his body between Square Head and Sandy Place. CPR was performed on Worthy, but he was eventually pronounced dead at the scene. Number 1. Kayak Killer. On April the 19th of 2015, Angelica Graswald and fiancé Vincent Villafore headed out across the Hudson River towards Bannerman's Island. The water was cold, about 48 degrees, and the forecast called for rain, but they paddled out regardless. On the return trip several hours later, they encountered turbulent waves. Villafore, who wasn't wearing a life vest or a wetsuit in addition to using the improper kayak for the water type, told Graswald that it would be the adventure of a lifetime. Those would end up being his last words to her. 46-year-old Villafore's kayak overturned, and he was carried out by the current to ultimately drown in the rough waters. Graswald placed a 911 call in which the strong winds were audible, as were the waves battering her kayak. Claiming she was unable to reach Villafore, she capsized as well but was wearing a life vest and was subsequently rescued. Later, in an 11-hour police interrogation, the 35-year-old woman would tell officers that Villafore was controlling, constantly pushing her into a lifestyle that she didn't want, and admitted that she wanted him to die. Yet she denied killing him. According to the police, she'd confessed to removing a draining plug from his kayak and a connector ring from his paddle, but that conversation wasn't recorded. Grasswald was arrested and faced life in prison for second-degree murder. Even though some media outlets had labeled her as the kayak killer, Grasswald always maintained her innocence, claiming she hadn't intended to kill her fiancé. She ultimately pled guilty to the lesser charge of negligent homicide, for which she spent just over 2.5 years in prison. Thanks for watching. Would you rather kayak down a Class 5 rapid or go down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench in a submersible? Let us know in the comments section below.